Wii Party was a runaway success, establishing ND Cube as Nintendo's premier party game studio. So, when Nintendo was rolling out their new console, the Wii U, a sequel to Wii Party was probably very high on their priority list to show off the potential that the Wii U had as a multiplayer game machine. So, how do you create a sequel to a decidedly unique game like Wii Party, and did Wii Party U pull it off? Well, welcome back to Mark's Rec Room, where today we're going to be analyzing Wii Party U, the party game on both the big screen and the little screen. I think it's hard to talk about Wii Party without putting it into its proper historical context, which is a hilarious sentence now that I'm actually saying that out loud. Wii Party was a big deal for ND Cube when it came out and succeeded in the way that it did. The team had to overcome a lot of pressure and navigate through a lot of red tape to get it out the door, but once it was released, it became one of the Wii's best-selling games. Now, sure, it probably helped that it was bundled with a Wii Remote. However, a counterpoint for this is that Wii Play Motion, a sequel to the smash hit Wii Play, also came bundled with a Wii Remote Plus 1 year after Wii Party and sold significantly fewer copies. So even though that bundle likely helped, something about Wii Party's core gameplay had to have resonated with Wii owners at that time. When ND Cube created this game, they spent a lot of time deliberating on what a party game should truly be, and they eventually arrived at a product with an expanse of modes to play so anyone could find something to love. Whether you're competing in minigames against friends or hiding Wii remotes around the room, something here would likely captivate your group, whether you are playing with friends in a college dorm or with family in the living room. By the way, if any of this sounds unfamiliar, I'd recommend checking out my video about Wii Party, as I think it's helpful to know what context it was released in to understand how ND Cube approached the creation of Wii Party U. The stakes were high for ND Cube as they set out to follow up their widely successful and standard-setting party game. On top of following up Wii Party U had another task: utilize the Wii U's new controller. The story of how the Wii U flopped has been told numerous times from numerous perspectives, but if there's one thing that it seems that most people can agree on in retrospect, it's that the Wii U gamepad was really good at delivering one-of-a-kind multiplayer experiences. Asymmetrical multiplayer is a complicated thing to pull off well. I mean, just look at Mario Party's various 1 vs 3 minigames that struggle to balance power between the teams. However, the Wii U's hardware created opportunities for unique asymmetrical multiplayer experiences that have stood the test of time. Whether you're chasing candy-craving villagers in Nintendo Land or trying to get away with fruit thievery in Game & Wario, the Wii U gamepad enabled Nintendo to create rare and specialized multiplayer experiences that you can't get anywhere else. When Wii Party U was revealed in the January 2013 Nintendo Direct, Satoru Iwata reinforced the strength of the Wii U's multiplayer capabilities explicitly.
This game will use the features of Wii U to create very different experience from games like Nintendo Land or Game & Wario. This will continue to enhance our image of making Wii U the system that brings everyone together.
Multiplayer was the Wii U's best use case, so a sequel to the Wii's most out-of-the-box party game wasn't just inevitable, it was critical. The gamepad needed to be justified, and who better to do it than the folks at ND Cube, who created a smash hit out of the idea of hiding a Wii remote. As a result, Wii Party U is structured very similarly to Wii Party. There isn't any one specific mode that defines this game's content yet again, but instead there are tons of modes with radically different gameplay styles so that anybody could find something to love here. Wii Party U's modes are split into 3 different sections. TV Party, modes where you're all playing on the TV very similarly to other party games. House Party, a mode where you use the room around you in unique ways very similar to Wii Party's House Party section. And finally, GamePad Party, this game's replacement for the pair modes. So just like last time, we're going to review all of this game's multiplayer offerings, beginning with TV Party. If you're a fan of the party games section in Wii Party, I have got some excellent news for you. Many of the modes in Wii Party U's TV Party are either direct follow-ups to a mode from Wii Party, or a spiritual successor that looks or feels very similar to those beloved modes. I'm a bit torn on this. On the one hand, Wii Party's defining trait was its buffet of brand new, unique gameplay modes that weren't really like any other party game at the time, so rehashing a lot lot of Wii Party's content in the sequel sort of feels like it's missing the point of what made Wii Party so different. On the other hand, I quite enjoyed Wii Party's main modes, and the prospect of new, enhanced versions of modes that I already enjoy is an easy sell. However, are these versions superior to their predecessors? Well, I think the best place to start is with Highway Rollers, the sequel to Board Game Island. For the uninitiated, in this mode, everybody plays a minigame before each turn, and your placement in the minigames determines the order in which you roll and the dice you roll. In Wii Party, the minigames grant you a bronze, silver, or gold die depending on your placement, but in Highway Rollers, everything is a little more extreme. If you place last, you'll only roll 2 dice, but if you place third, you'll roll 4 dice, second place gets 7, and first place gets 10. To break it down, Highway Rollers is just Board Game Island, but with bigger numbers. Instead of getting launched forward 4 spaces, you get launched forward 30. Instead of trying to roll a 6 at the final challenge, you're trying to roll 40. But doesn't it feel like this game is compensating for something? Making the board hundreds of spaces long and all of your rolls bigger doesn't really change the gameplay in a meaningful way. It just makes the math a little bit more complicated, which doesn't affect much since you're not making any routing decisions or anything like that. I think a lot of these changes were made to mask the fact that Highway Rollers is just Board Game Island, but slightly worse. Highway Rollers features fewer space types, fewer luck bottlenecks, no volcano-style purgatory, and no dual space. You've still got your go forward and go backward spaces, including this new rocket space. The UFO spaces no longer swap players' places and instead just takes the sorry player that landed there to an opponent's space chosen at random. The new last place boost space, get this, boosts last place. You can either launch last place up a set number of spaces, or if you get the UFO, it'll bring them to the person who landed on this space. Yawn. At least the 1 versus rivals space is better because the team of 3 gets to roll 2 dice each if they win, which gives them more motivation to actually care about the minigame. This is better than Wii Party's variant because the team of 3 didn't gain anything from winning in that version, so at least there's something in it for them. Other than that change, the space types are just way less interesting, both aesthetically and mechanically from the ones found in Board Game Island, and the luck-based bottlenecks are no different. At space 100 on the board, the player needs to roll an odd number to get the bridge to connect the road. At space 200, the player needs to roll at least 1 green light out of 5 dice, which is really easy. And finally, like I mentioned earlier, at the end of the board, there's the final challenge where the first player to attempt needs to roll at least a 40, and every subsequent attempt needs to roll at least a 35. This sucks too because instead of allowing you to use your additional die to clear the challenge like Wii Party does, giving even more emphasis on your minigame wins, Highway Rollers just blasts you back a few spaces to try again, and you'll always use 10 dice when you attempt this challenge no matter what. Highway Rollers just disappoints me, man. While I thought that Board Game Island was fun, it wasn't perfect or anything, and there was a lot of potential for Highway Rollers to come through and improve things. Maybe change up the way that the luck-based bottlenecks work, add new space types, but no. What we wind up with is a passable, yet inferior version of a mode that we already had. Next up is GamePad Island, and it's a bit of a weird one. It's kind of like a spiritual successor to Board Game Island, but it takes the idea in a different direction. In GamePad Island, each player takes turns playing a little micro game on the gamepad to determine their role. At first, everybody just rolls a standard die, but then for every subsequent turn, you'll play a micro game that involves some actual skill input. So you take turns rolling from the player who's furthest from the goal to the player who's the closest. And as you continue through the turn order, the minigame becomes more and more difficult. So take this cannon minigame for instance. The player in last place's version is really simple. It's hard to mess up and not get at least close to the number that you want. As you go through the turns, the numbers are rearranged, shrunk, and spread apart, making first place's version much more difficult. There are 15 of these rolling micro games, each of them utilizing the gamepad's different functions, whether it's the touchscreen, the motion controls, or the microphone, unfortunately. It's an interesting way to change up the Board Game Island structure. In Board Game Island, your performance in minigames minigames gave you more opportunities to roll high, but ultimately you were still at the mercy of your luck. However, in GamePad Island, you get direct control over the numbers you roll, well, most of the time. It makes this mode a lot more skill-based. Instead of offsetting any skill gaps with luck-based dice rolls, instead, skilled players are tested more aggressively and need to perform well to advance. That's a really cool concept. The idea here is super clever and offers a nice change of pace compared to highway rollers. However, this mode has a serious problem with its pacing. While it's super cool that your role is determined directly by your performance in a microgame, that microgame is single player, and for each turn you have to watch each person play through a variant of the same minigame over and over again. Personally, I would have liked for each player's roles to be determined through multiplayer minigames instead of single player minigames played one after each other. That way, there's more interaction between the players, and if one of you is performing exceedingly well, the other three can gang up on that player to try to level the playing field. There are versus minigames, but they're only played when someone runs through a versus balloon on the board, and there's only 4 of them on the board, so make them count. After you play the minigame, first place will move forward 5 spaces, second 3 spaces, third 2 spaces, and last place 1 space. The 1 versus rival space is also on this board and functions similarly to highway rollers, boosting the solo player 5 spaces if they win, or sending them backwards 2 spaces if the rivals win. This isn't as motivating as rewarding the rivals for their victory, but it is funnier to unite the team of 3 with the singular goal of knocking the one down a peg, so I still think this is a good outcome. So, there are multiplayer minigame opportunities on the board, but they are less of the focus, which to me loses a lot of the charm of Board Game Island. The appeal of Board Game Island is that it focuses itself around competitive multiplayer minigames so much that provide direct opportunities for players to compete with each other. That element of competition is lost when you're spending the majority of the game watching each other play microgames alone. It seriously lacks that player interactivity and variety that made Board Game Island so fun. Otherwise, GamePad Island is very close to Board Game Island in structure. The goal of the board is to reach the end, the spaces mostly center around sending you forwards or backwards on the board, and there's even a spiritual successor to the volcano by sending players down to the bottom of this waterfall. There is this really neat section with a wobbly bridge that can only hold 1 player at a time. If more than 1 player lands on this bridge, both players fall down to the bottom of the waterfall. This is really neat because it reminds me of the cracking ice from Chilly Waters, one of my favorite Mario Party boards from the Nintendo 64 days. However, other than that, GamePad Island's board design is very similar to Board Game Island. The differences between these two modes lie mostly in the bottlenecks or challenges. In Board Game Island and Highway Rollers, these are luck-based challenges that the player needs to pass by just rolling well. However, GamePad Island changes this up in a really cool way. There are 3 challenges where the player will arrive at a big wall, and they will need to draw a line across the crack of the wall to open it up and continue forward. To do this, the player needs to face the gamepad away from themselves and draw while looking at the TV. If you get off course, the next player who arrives at the wall picks up where you left off. I love this. It's a novel use of the gamepad, it's actually skill-based instead of banging your head against a luck-based roadblock, and it's not time-consuming, so the game gets on its way quickly. There's also another challenge in the latter half of the board where the player will have to pick one of 3 routes, but only one of them will take them to the other side. However, the player selects the route on the gamepad and the TV does not alert the other players as to which route they took. So, each player has to figure it out for themselves. It's a cute idea, but it can create a pretty big gap between first and last place if you don't tell the other players which route was successful. Overall, GamePad Island is another passable version of Board Game Island, but I just don't think the microgame structure replaces the competitive multiplayer minigames each turn. It's an inventive mode that thinks outside of the box with the gamepad, but I just don't think its ideas result in a party game that is as memorable or replayable. Also, I didn't rate the microgames just because I felt like they wouldn't fit properly on the scale next to the full minigames. However, it kind of feels wrong to not talk about each of them in some capacity, so here's a brief ranking of each of the 15 rolls from worst to best. The standard roll is the weakest, it's just a dice roll. Number 14, Spin Zone. Stop it on the number you want, harder versions are faster. It's very, very dull. Number 13, Card Tap. Tap the card you want. Wahoo! Number 12, add 'em up. You roll dice, but there are also red dice in the box that can subtract from your roll. It gets bonus points for letting you re-roll and try to get the number that you want. Number 11, number wheel. It's kind of luck, since the player can't see the wheel, but the other players can gaslight them into picking a bad number. It's kind of fun, but it's the weakest of these turn the gamepad around rolls. Number 10, trick cups. It's a basic shell game, but it can get fast towards the higher difficulties. Well, not that fast, but it does get fast-ish. Number 9, pinball push. Launch the pinball and hope you get the number you want. It's kind of just RNG, but it's dressed up enough that I kind of like it. Number 8, beaker sneak. In this one, you have to face the gamepad away from you and tilt it to get the water to the level that rolls the number that you want. A super clever micro game where your friends can gaslight you, and you can really only use audio clues and your intuition. Number 7, balloon blow up. Like beaker sneak, but you're blowing up a balloon, so the audio cues are a little more intuitive. Number 6, blown away. This one's neat. You have to blow the ball up to the number that you want by blowing into the microphone. It might sound like this micro game wouldn't work well, but you'd be surprised. It's a fun test of timing and pacing. Number 5, target practice. Launch the arrow at the target that you want. Fun, intuitive, and quick. Just how these micro games should be. Number 4, air darts. Move the gamepad around and blow to shoot a dart at the balloon you want. It's novel, responsive, and fun. Number 3, perfect timing. The best of the gaslighting micro games. In this one, you'll face the gamepad away from you and try to count in your head and land on the number that you want. It's all in your head, and your friends have a great opportunity to get directly inside of your head with this one. Super fun. Number 2, Cannon Blast. Challenging, requires a decent amount of thought, and actually scales in difficulty per turn really well. And finally, at number 1, I chose In the Balance. In this micro game, you have to remove fruit that you think will get you to the number that you want. It's fun, tests your critical thinking, and requires you to commit when you take the fruit off. It's so good. Wasn't that fun? If you've ever played GamePad Island, let me know which role is your favorite in the comments. Anyways, let's move on to Mi Fashion Plaza. Mi Fashion Plaza is the outlying mode in TV Party. If I had to make a comparison, I'd say this is the spiritual successor to Globetrot, since it's a more complex board game mode with victory points and items, but that's honestly where the similarities end. In Mi Fashion Plaza, your goal is to put together fashionable outfits and score points over 15 turns. Scattered across the board are different spaces for hats, shirts, pants, and shoes. Landing on each of these spaces gives you an article of clothing in the set that matches the color of the space. Once you make a full rotation on the board, you have the option to go up to the main stage with the clothes you have, and you'll be judged based on the star rating of each individual article of clothing you have on. However, if you're wearing a full outfit set, you'll double the outfit score. So, naturally, this means that completing sets is your best track to success, and it's also critical that you stop your opponents from successfully completing sets too. There are 5 different outfit sets, each categorized by color. Some sets are easier to complete because they have fewer pieces, while others are harder to complete but yield more points. However, the purple and yellow sets are just worse versions of the blue and red sets respectively, taking up the same amount of slots but rewarding less points when completed. This feels a little haphazard. Why are 2 of the 5 sets in this game equally as challenging to complete, but they award fewer points arbitrarily? I think it would have been nice to see some more diversity in the challenge it takes to complete an outfit versus the rewards you get, and it would have been cool to maybe reward players for trying to mix and match outfits into something creative for bonus points. However, that might be getting a little too complex for this mode. So, you might be thinking, how do minigames fit into this mode? Well, every 4 turns, a minigame will be played. After turns 4 and 8, players are rewarded an article of clothing for their placement in the minigame. First place will get to choose an article of clothing, second place gets to choose a set and receive a random article from that set, and third gets a random piece from a random set. After turn 12, the players who come in first and second will get to steal an article of clothing from another player, with the caveat that second cannot steal from first. This is super fun and makes the latter stages of the game really competitive. Finally, after the final turn, the winner of the minigame will get one last chance on stage before the results, which is often game-defining. There are a few spaces across the board that have some different effects. The pink space with the star will initiate a 1 versus rivals minigame. If the 1 wins, they get to pick an article of clothing. If the team of 3 wins, nothing happens. Say it with me, class. The 3 need to be motivated by an opportunity to gain rather than just playing to protect the status quo. Very good. The versus space initiates a duel with the opponent of the player's choice. If the plaintiff wins, they get to steal an article of clothing, but if the defendant wins, nothing happens. What did we just go over? The space with the stage on it will take you directly to the stage. Ooh, surprise, surprise. The space with the question mark will spin a roulette with a variety of potential effects, all mostly positive unless if you're not ready for the bright lights on stage yet. Finally, there are these two spaces right in front of the stage for the one-stop shop, where you can get any clothing piece from any set that you want. Shockingly, this game also has a light item system allowing for additional movement options. The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and slow dice return from Mario Party 9 and function exactly how they sound, but this game also has dice that can multiply your roll by 2, 3, or 4 times. You can get these special dice by passing the carts on the board after you show off an outfit on stage or through the lucky roulette. Mii Fashion Plaza is pretty fun, but I don't know if I would describe it as a must play. It's a very simple but luck-heavy mode that is mostly determined by rolling the correct number to get the specific clothing articles that you need to complete sets, and not much else. Minigames do balance this a bit by adding some skill input opportunities, but their implementation feels a bit clumsy to me. You'll only play 4 free-for-all minigames since they only occur every 4 turns, so most of the other minigames you'll play are 1 versus rivals or duels, which can vary in frequency depending on your rolls and really only benefit one side. I really like the idea of having opportunities to steal clothes via minigames and ruin your opponent's outfits right before they get to the stage. That's super fun. The items add a nice bit of strategy to the gameplay too, although they are given out randomly in Mario Party 5 fashion, so you can't choose to purchase something that's helpful in the moment, you just have to hope that you get the item that you need through luck. I think Mii Fashion Plaza is a decent mode, but it just needs a little more player input. More minigames, maybe the ability to earn coins and buy outfits instead of just getting them by landing on spaces, maybe a larger board with branching paths. Wait, I'm just describing Globetrot, aren't I? Mii Fashion Plaza is a fun change of pace from the typical Mario Party session or highway rollers, and I think there's something to be said about its simplicity for younger players. However, as a long-lasting board game experience, I don't think it quite has the same staying power as modes like Globetrot or Board Game Island. Team building is the spiritual successor to Swap Meet, and this is where I think we start to see Wii Party U hit its stride. In team building, your goal is to build a soccer team of 5 Miis with good synergy to score points. How do you build these teams? Well, you build them into poker hands, of course. So yeah, every player has both a number and a color on their jersey, and you can build teams into different poker hands based on these colors and numbers to score bonus points. So if you build a straight, or a cereal team, you'll get bonus points and one of the funniest animations ever found in a Nintendo game. Before each round, a group of 5 Miis will come out, and the player who comes in first gets to shuffle their Miis around with the Miis from this group. The player who comes in second then gets to pick from a group of 4 players, third a group of 3, and fourth a group of 2. You could swap in as many as you need to make the best team possible, but winning the minigames gives you first dibs at a bigger group of players to draft from. Coming in first is critical too, because the group that you'll draft from is visible to you before you even play the minigame. So you don't just get to draft from the largest group, but you also get to make the most informed draft, since you know what Miis are available going in. There are less special Mii types than in Swap Meet, only the Wild Mii really makes it in this time around, but that's fine, since team building allows you to swap in multiple Miis at once and you build a new team each round, so something like the Clear Mii wouldn't work here. Team building is a fun mode. I'd say it's about on par with Swap Meet. Both modes center minigames as a tool to allow players to have first dibs at decision making, but players who don't win minigames can still perform well overall with some strategic thinking. I'd say that team building is a little more luck heavy since you're drawing new teams each round, so you're not going to be working on the same 3x2 over multiple rounds like in Swap Meet. However, I think the novelty and out of the box thinking of having to create poker hands with these Miis competes strongly with Swap Meet. That could be the Balatro brain rot talking though. Team building is a fun alternative take on Swap Meet's concept. It still encourages quick strategic thinking and centers itself around minigames as a means to make informed decisions, but it does this in a new yet familiar way. The final mode in TV Party to cover here is the Balldozer, the spiritual successor to Wii Party's weakest mode, Bingo. Bingo was the weakest party game because it was vapid. I mean, what you see is what you get here, and it barely utilized minigames in a meaningful way. The Balldozer, on the other hand, is a much better experience. This mode is a competitive token pushing game like what you'd see at arcades. Everybody will play a minigame and then players will get to drop balls into the machine based on their performance. First gets 4 balls, second gets 3, third gets 2, and last gets 1. Players will gain 1 point per ball that falls down this center hole here, but any balls that fall off the sides will not count for any points. The gold balls are worth 10 additional points, and the skull and crossbones balls will subtract 5 points from your score. Later on in the game, a little hoop will be added to the bottom of the machine. If you can sink a ball through this hoop, an onslaught of free balls will come through and take your score to the moon. At the end of 5 turns, the player with the most points wins. The Balldozer is basically what I wished Bingo was. It's a short, low impact, but fast-paced minigame mode that is super respectful of your time, easy to jump into, but also still has a focus on those minigames and makes them worth playing. In my experience, this is a super fun mode to play with people who don't play video games very often. Its arcadey feel and quick pace is the perfect way to ease somebody into a party game without the time commitment that a board game requests. But it's also got enough depth and player input that everyone will connect with the game fairly quickly. This is how you make a minigame mode, people! Overall, I'd argue that TV Party is good, but not great. Every mode here is competent, and if you put this on with some friends, you're likely going to have a fun time. But I can't help but look at these modes as iterative at best and inferior at worst. Mi Fashion Plaza is the most unique, but it's a bit shallow for my tastes and definitely does not surpass the board game modes from the previous game. However, Highway Rollers and GamePad Island are the real disappointments here for me. I don't think Board Game Island is some kind of perfect game mode by any means. It also has its shortcomings. However, neither of these two modes evolved that formula into something that truly surpasses the original. GamePad Island has some good ideas in the way that it handles its challenges, almost to the point where I wish that the best ideas from these two modes could have been combined into one unique evolution of the formula. Since we have two modes replicating Board Game Island, I think that also makes the TV Party modes seem less diverse than Wii Parties. They do their job, they offer some multiplayer fun, but they don't push that standard forward or even refine the ideas from the past. Instead, they just bring them to a new generation, slightly worse than they were before. TV Party is also the only section of the game that really centers around its minigame set, so I think now is the best time to evaluate this game's minigames. So, for the minigames, I will be rating them on my scale from 1 to 10, then finding the mean, median, and mode to see how Wii Party U stacks up when compared to its contemporaries. The score for each minigame will be on the bottom right corner of the screen as we discuss them. Wii Party U has 66 minigames that can be found in its normal set, an increase from Wii Party's 57 within its party set. Wii Party U also lacks dual minigames since each of its free-for-alls can actually be played with any number of human players between 2 and 4. So the dual minigames in Mi Fashion Plaza are actually just the free-for-alls, which is pretty resourceful. Anyways, let's get to it and rate Wii Party U's minigames. Balloon Boppers is very vapid and over way too quickly. Jumping Target is a really fun timing minigame. This one will have you in the heads of your opponents and trying to jump at different times to take advantage of when your opponents are landing on their trampoline and can't throw a dart. Face Flippers reminds me a lot of Picture This from Mario Party 7. You have to flip to the appropriate Mii's face for 5 different rounds and press A when you're on the correct page. In this one, you can't go backwards, so if you accidentally pass the correct Mii's face, you have to flip all the way back around. It's a different enough take on the idea to stand on its own and is still a really great minigame. The only reason I like Picture This more is that I personally enjoy the idea of flipping through an animation frame by frame more than simply recognizing a Mii. No Goals Barred is a really fun and frantic minigame. You'll all get in each other's way and accidentally score for each other, which lends itself to some great times. Close Knit is a very awkward waggle minigame, but I kind of have to respect its odd control scheme because it tries really hard to emulate the actions on screen. Super Snow Sliders is a pretty interesting take on a waggle minigame. Waggle, then time your A press to see how far you get. I suck at it, but I like it. Star Pupil is a fun reaction minigame. In Heart Targets, you point and click at the hearts. If you've seen 5 seconds of this game, you've seen it all. Sitting Pretty is a musical chairs minigame that's actually pretty fun. I just don't get why the points score in the way that they do. The rounds aren't really getting harder per se, so it doesn't make sense that the final round is worth more points. I personally think it would have been better to give a bonus to the first player to sit down, or just make this minigame elimination style. I love Twisted Flight. You have to balance your rotations on both sides to get the farthest. It's such a fun spin on what is otherwise just a waggle minigame. Pool Party is a really fun dodge the hazards minigame wrapped in a really neat aesthetic. Sure, it can be a little unpredictable, but I think its unpredictable hazards make it stand out when compared to other minigames like it. Cage Chomp is just too easy. It becomes more of a test of who can mash the fastest on the correct card. Mii Vaulters is another minigame that is basically just a waggle minigame, but they dressed it up enough with setting the jump angle that makes it at least a little unique. Domino Tally is a lot like Commuter Count and Goomba Spotting, although I think this is the most challenging and least interesting version of this minigame. Shutterbird is a fun little minigame where you need to find the pissed off bird first. Snap Judgment takes the idea from Don't Look and just does it better. The snappiness of pressing buttons as opposed to swinging the Wii Remote in a direction allows this minigame to flow so much faster and provides a much fairer challenge. Pose Pros is fun. A little easy, but fun nonetheless. I love how it rewards the fastest player as well. If this didn't have descending scoring, this would be way lower. Symmetrical Suits is a pretty easy matching minigame. It's inoffensive. Recipe Recall is like Fruits of Doom, but way easier. It's far too easy to get all 10 ingredients right, which kind of takes all of the tension away. Space Zappers is a classic, no-frills, arcadey light gun minigame. Freeze is an interesting minigame in theory, but very uneventful in practice. It's basically just a test to see who has the most stable hand out of your group. It's as boring to play as it is to watch. Token Drop. Time your tokens and get points. What you see is what you get. Safari Hustle is just like Derby Dash, except you get to pick from 4 different animals with different stats to fit your playstyle. I'm torn between these two different versions of these minigames. On the one hand, I like that Safari Hustle gives players options on how they want to approach the game. It's a sort of tortoise and hare dilemma. Do you pick the less quick characters with more stamina, or the faster characters with less stamina? On the other hand, I think Derby Dash is better for beginners since players who know how to use the Rhino will just be at an advantage over the others. I think Derby Dash is probably the better minigame, but that mostly comes down to me preferring that even playing field. Balance Broncos is a fun tilting reaction minigame. Maze Malaise is a little too easy. I don't really get why they show the maze at the start. It would have been more fun to have to figure it out blind. Snow Shredders is an alright reaction minigame. It's blander than it looks. River Rollin' is what a fun version of Rudder Madness could have been. Speed of Sight actually requires you to be astute. It's a comparably fun version of Earn It. Power Prisms is like playing a knockoff of Pac-Man on your desktop. It's fine. Alley Hoops. Take Basketball Bonanza and turn it into a 4-player competitive minigame. It's a really fun one. Big Bang Blasters is a fun little physics puzzle minigame. It's a fun time, but maybe lasts a little too long. Lap Happy is a neat 3-part masher that tests 3 different types of frantic inputs. It's like Mario Medley, but without the stamina management, which takes it down a bit for me. I like resource management minigames. What can I say? Fruiter Scare is fine, generally, it's just a little too easy. 1-2 Punch is a fun, intense reaction minigame, although it feels a tad redundant besides Star Pupil. Balanced Diet is a very fun mind games minigame where you want to make risky moves to be the first one to get the weight right, but you don't want to miscalculate and set up an opponent or overextend and knock yourself out. My only gripe is that this minigame goes on for a little too long, and if you win, you have to watch everybody play for subsequent places. Other than that, banger minigame. Moonbase Escape is a fast-paced minigame where you swing your Wii Remote in the designated direction to open doors. It's more responsive than you'd think. Ramped Up is a really fun chicken minigame where you want to get as close to the steps as possible without going over. What I like about this minigame is that you play chicken with your opponents by setting yourself up higher and higher on the ramp, so instead of pressing a button to stop yourself, you're one-upping them on the ramp and then hoping that they overextend or that you were the closest. It's a different way of setting up a chicken minigame, and it's a more memorable one as a result. Flockshot is a worse version of Smile Snap. It's a lot less predictable. I think watching 8 static faces and trying to catch them all looking at the camera is much better than birds randomly flying in and out of frame. It's easy to lose to a flock of 30 birds flying in at the last second that you couldn't have realistically seen coming, so the results boil down more to luck and committing than they do to observation. Ice Spinners is a pretty simple waggle minigame dressed up with a little bit of timing at the end. It's nothing crazy, but pretty fun. Pogo Battle is a kind of clunky spooky minigame where you bonk your opponents off of the platform. It's better than bumper balls at least. Hide and go beak is a luck minigame, sure, but there's something about this game's presentation that tickles my fancy. Maybe it's the sound design, maybe it's the treacherous scenario where we're hiding behind prop shrubbery from an ostrich. I can't quite explain it, I just have a soft spot for the unserious way that this minigame presents itself. Countdown Crisis is hot potato, but just a little too slow. For my money, I'd take the mind games of Head Waiter over this any day. Assemble Bots is like Peace Out meets Robot Factory. It's alright, I like the risk and reward of either assembling mismatched robots or waiting for the matching pieces to fall into place, and you can throw off a player that is waiting for a specific piece by snagging it and adding it to a mismatched robot of yours. Ultimately, I think it needed to reward that offensive play more than it does. Run to the Sun is basically the same minigame as Dicey Descent. Pick a side and hope you don't die. At least in this version, you can bump each other around. Mad Hatters is another great mind games minigame, like Strategy Steps or Bombard King Babam. You don't want to be caught dead in the same hat as another player, so you have to really get inside of their head and see if they're greedy or not. I will never get tired of this minigame archetype. It's one of my personal favorites. Apple Scramble is a pretty fun apple collecting minigame. It's interesting because it rewards risky play when you run to the top of the hill to have first dibs on the apples, but then you have less time to react to the spike balls rolling at you, and if you get hit, you drop a ton of apples for the bottom feeders to collect. Water Walkers is a decent timing minigame. This is going to be the nitpick to end all nitpicks, but I don't like how the camera pans alongside the player in first. It makes the players falling behind smaller and smaller, which makes it even harder to time your A presses visually and catch up. RC Drifters, drive your RC car in a circle to rack up points. It's about as fun as it sounds. Match Me, match the Mii's faces 3 times. It doesn't sound that fun, but there's an interesting risk and reward element here where the slot will slow down as time goes on. So do you let the slot slow down and give opponents time to surpass you, or do you try to stop it at full speed and gain an advantage? The choice is yours. Cliff Riders is a really tense and fun pathing minigame. Every time it shows up in the rotation, it always puts the entire room on edge, even spectators. The only thing that stops it from being a 10 is that it's a little too easy to reach the end if you're a seasoned player. If this was endless, it would be a 10. Safe Landings is basically the same as Lunar Ticks from Mario Party 6. Try to land as close to 0 as possible and don't go over. Simple, great mind games, what more could you ask for? Tube Tosser is Archer Rival if it was easier for the 3. It's balanced better, but it's still not great. Zig Zaggarat is a fun concept, but a bit too easy for the 3. God, I want to like Shuttershy so badly. It uses the Wii U gamepad's unique perspective so interestingly and calls back to Camera Shy, my favorite minigame from Mario Party DS. However, this minigame is so hard for the 1. You have to get really good, non-blurry shots while physically rotating around with the gamepad, making yourself sick, and you have to catch all 3 of the other players in 20 seconds. 20 seconds! You'll be lucky if you get 1 or 2 of the other players in that time, let alone all 3. Sorry, Shuttershy, I love you on paper, but I hate you in execution. You Can't Catch Me is super fun. It's like a simplified version of Luigi's Ghost Mansion from Nintendo Land, where the player on the gamepad is invisible and the team of 3 needs to find them through environmental clues like these light up panels. However, in this version, the player simply needs to evade capture instead of trying to sneak up on the other players. It's a good, dare I say, great 1v3 that really takes advantage of the Wii U's asymmetrical gameplay capabilities. Well done, ND Cube! Operation Sandbox is a slightly better version of Think Tank from Mario Party 7, but it's got the same balance problems, unfortunately. UFO Zap Up is laughably easy for the 3. Penalty Kick Challenge is really easy for the 1. The gamepad player has a lot of time to react, so you don't have to preemptively jump, and as a result, it's hard to sneak one by any real person playing. Perilous Pathways is a really interesting concept for a minigame that takes advantage of the gamepad. In this minigame, the gamepad player sets traps and the 3 players have to find a safe way across. The gamepad player's job is really difficult because they have to fool all 3 players within 3 rounds, and if one player finds their way across, they'll just tell their teammates what route they took. It's still a fun minigame, just a bit of an uphill battle for the solo player. Ninja Scramble is a cute little shell game where the team of 3 act as the shells, but believe it or not, this is still very easy for the 1. Punch Dunk is a neat usage of the dual control sticks and triggers on the gamepad, forcing some multitasking from the solo player. The minigame isn't horribly balanced either, although I'd have to give the edge to the 3. Not bad though. Blast Panels is a pretty fun little puzzle minigame that can get pretty competitive and is balanced well. Good stuff. Spiked Ball Brawl is basically a better version of Crate and Peril. Still pretty unbalanced though. Diamond of Mine is really easy for the 3. Catch a Wave is a really cool idea. The gamepad player has to speak into the gamepad's microphone at low and high pitches to try to raise the opposing players up into the electricity here, and the team of 3 need to run and avoid them. This is such a cool and interesting idea, but unfortunately it doesn't work because you have to basically scream bloody murder to get the volume high enough to hit the electricity. Your mileage may vary depending on your situation, but I think this was a good idea with terrible execution. That's all of the minigames in Wii Party U. Wii Party U ends up with a mean score of 5.63, with a median of 6 and mode of 5. For reference, that would place Wii Party U at 4th place within my Mario Party minigame means, behind Mario Party 6 but above Mario Party 5. I think Wii Party U has a pretty consistent lineup of minigames, outperforming Wii Party by just a little bit, which should be a testament to this game's minigame quality. While Wii Party U didn't have any 10s in its lineup, there were a fair amount of 9s that came very close. Even the 1v3s performed decently well. I mean, there were still some duds in there, but there were a surprising amount of competent 1v3s that took advantage of the Wii U gamepad as a tool for asymmetrical multiplayer. Even if some of its more ambitious ideas didn't quite pay off, I think there's a lot to enjoy here in Wii Party U's minigame set. If you want more of these minigames, there are a couple of free play versions, with a few endless single-player versions of minigames, an expanded multiplayer version of Big Bang Blasters, and Demolition Row, a typical color-matching puzzle minigame with a unique twist. If you clear 3 of these blocks with stars, your opponent has to scramble to the gamepad to clear a challenge before they can continue, meaning you can continue to rack up combos while they're working on the gamepad. It's super clever and unique. This isn't my favorite puzzle minigame out there. For one, the blocks are so cumbersome that the rows on the edges are basically inaccessible, but it's still a unique usage of the gamepad, and it's worth checking out if you and a friend are down for some competitive puzzling. So, there's a great selection of minigames here, but what are some of the extra minigame modes that we can play them in? Wii Party U has 3 extra multiplayer minigame modes to check out here as well. Battle of the Minigames is your typical win 3 or 5 minigames mode that's been around forever. It's a staple, and I'm glad to see it here. Another mode that I'm glad to see return is my GOAT, Spot the Sneak, which I'm going to call Spot the Sneak U for this section for clarity. I was very vocal about my adoration for Spot the Sneak in my Wii Party video. For the uninitiated, in Spot the Sneak, you'll play a set of 3 or 5 minigames and get rewarded points for your performance. However, one player is given an unfair advantage, a cheat code if you will. At the end of each round, everybody needs to figure out who the sneak is. If you guess correctly, the sneak gives you 10 points, but if you guess wrong, the sneak steals 10 points from you. It's one of my favorite minigame modes ever, frankly. It changes up the way that you approach minigames by giving one player an advantage that they can use to sweep up points, but it also has this really fun social deduction element that has you closely examining your opponents as you play to see who's performing a little too well and who might be intentionally underperforming. If you watched my Wii Party video, you might remember that one of my biggest critiques of the mode was that some of the sneak's abilities were a bit too easy to detect, because the sneak had no control over when it activated. So in minigames like Ram Jam, it becomes glaringly obvious who the sneak is when they start parting the flock like the Red Sea. In that video, I even cheekily suggested, maybe having optional sneak abilities that players could use with a button press would be more ideal. Who knows, maybe they'll do that in the future. Well, as my ever so subtle foreshadowing suggested, they did exactly that. In Spot the Sneak U, many of the sneak abilities are toggleable with the B button, so the player gets to choose how often they use it. So, for example, in Alley Hoops, the player can choose to press B to pull a golden ball whenever they want. However, if the sneak gets too greedy, it will be really obvious, so they have to try to sneak in as many points as they can without raising suspicion. I really like this because the sneak gets to choose how and when they use their advantage, which makes the whole actual mode a lot more strategic and the social deduction a lot more fun. Some of my critiques of Spot the Sneak are still present in the sequel. You can only play a max of 5 minigames, and the mode is still very weird to play with CPUs. If you can gather 4 friends to play, Spot the Sneak U will not disappoint. Finally, there's one new multiplayer minigame mode idea, and it's actually really clever. Bridge Burners is a cooperative minigame mode that encourages all players to work together. In this mode, you'll pick a difficulty level and then face up to 5 minigame challenges. In these challenges, players need to collaborate to reach a certain score threshold to beat the challenge and move forward. If you play this on hard mode, these score thresholds can actually be pretty tough, and one player cannot carry you to success. So this mode does require that all players lock in. If you don't complete the challenge, you'll lose a heart and need to try again until you beat the challenge. However, if you aren't confident in your skills in that minigame, you can try your luck at a different minigame at random. If you make it to the end of the bridge, the game tells you which player performed the best overall, but everybody is declared the winner. Bridge Burners isn't a mind-blowing minigame mode, but I will say it's a fun change of pace. If you and your friends are at each other's necks a lot during party games and want a break from the competitive modes, this could be a great alternative. I mean, you're still going to be at each other's necks, to be clear, but this time you're going to be fighting over who's carrying who, which can make for some good times. Overall, while Wii Party U doesn't have that many multiplayer minigame modes, it's still a step up from Wii Party, and its modes are totally worth trying. While TV Party and the minigames are a big part of Wii Party U, the focus on innovation and boundary pushing wasn't necessarily present in this mode. TV Party seems more interested in rehashing and polishing Wii Party's more original ideas, but the other 2 sections of the game tell a bit of a different story. In Wii Party, the second primary content category was the pair games, a selection of 3 modes that allowed 2 players to compete or cooperate in games tailored to a smaller group of players. It was a neat, albeit brief, bit of content in the game that was a little bit more casual and makes for a good afternoon with a friend. GamePad Party is Wii Party U's pair mode, but every mode in this game is played entirely off of the TV. In this mode, 2 players sit across from each other on opposite ends of the gamepad and play using the control sticks and shoulder buttons. Think of it like sitting on opposite ends of a tabletop arcade machine. If you got the physical version of this game, it actually came with a little cradle that you could put the gamepad in for some added stability. In GamePad Party, there are a few different modes to check out, along with a unique selection of minigames. Firstly, there are a few different simulators for classic tabletop staples like foosball, baseball, and marble racing. Foosball is a little weird because you don't move your players in a line like normal foosball. Instead, you can only move them in a circular motion. Baseball is exactly like what you'd expect. If you've played Clubhouse Games' 51 Worldwide Classics, it's pretty similar. Tabletop Gauntlet is a fun little competitive marble racer that works really well with the gamepad setup. None of these individual modes are super deep, but they're cute arcadey simulators. There are a couple of other modes here too, including Puzzle Blockade, a cute little co-op puzzle minigame where you're pushing blocks to form shapes, and Animal Matchup, a minigame where you try to memorize what cards have certain animals. In later rounds, you'll play a cooperative minigame, and then you'll get to see the cards flip over depending on the rank that you get based on how you perform. Animal Matchup isn't really noteworthy, but this co-op ranking system will return in future ND Cube Party games, so store it in the back of your mind. Most modes in GamePad Party are not super deep, so I've been able to describe them concisely in 1 or 2 sentences. The only mode in GamePad Party that's a little bit more complex is Me in a Row. In this mode, players try to match their Mii's head, torso, and legs. You'll take turns flipping over tokens, then placing them on this checkerboard until it's full at the end of 16 turns. Every 5 turns, you'll play a minigame, and the winner gets to flip one of their opponent's tokens to their color. Overall, it's a fun, strategic little duel mode. Again, it's nothing mind-blowing, but it's my favorite mode in GamePad Party by far. GamePad Party is novel, but shallow. It's an endearing proof of concept for the use case of playing with the gamepad off of the TV screen, but the modes on offer here are the sort of thing you play once or twice and rarely return to. Oh yeah, the minigames! There are a few GamePad Party exclusive minigames with 6 cooperative and 8 competitive. There aren't a ton here, but I'll give them a rating and derive the mean, for funsies. Fast Foodies is a super fun cooperative burger building minigame. If hardware allowed for it, I would love to see a 2v2 version of this. Fishing Buddies is as shallow as a cheap fish bowl. You should have to work together to catch as many fish as possible, not just catch one fast. Bot building is so boring. Also, what kind of robots are these? Who do they think they're fooling? Plunder plunge, bring the treasure up evenly. The perspective is weird and it's a little too easy. Treasure twirl and We Play Motion does this idea better in every conceivable way. Splish Splash Boats is a really cute boating minigame. You'll have to work together to row your boat into the beach balls. It's clever, intuitive, and really fun. The only real catch is that it's pass-fail since it's a cooperative minigame. This would be so much fun if it was fleshed out into a full 2v2. Crack Lumberjacks is basically Looney Lumberjacks from Mario Party 2, just with a control stick instead. It's a rootin' tootin' time, but it's inferior because you aren't competing against another team. Dodge the Danger Balls in Danger Ball Dodger. It's kind of like a dual version of Shuffleboard Showdown from Mario Party DS. Scratch and Find Me is like a competitive version of Hide and Boo Seek. It's fun and I like the frantic back and forth from taking turns, trying to uncover visible Miis before time runs out and you give your opponent a free point. Slot Car Circuit is a slot car minigame, alright. I'm more of a slot car derby fan myself. The controls on this version are just a bit too touchy for my tastes. Winged Pursuit. Tap the dragonflies as they fly across the screen. Pretty fun little reaction minigame. Curling competition is a cute idea, but giving the players unlimited stones enables a spray and pray strategy far too much. Sumo Smackdown is so overly sensitive, you'll likely lose if you try too hard. Power Punches is a fast rock'em sock'em robots type minigame. It's fun. Chicken is exactly what it sounds like. I'm a sucker for these minigames, I'm sorry. And that's all of the GamePad Party minigames. This set has a mean score of 6 flat, with a median of 6 and a mode of 8. That ranks it right on par with Wii Party's pair set, but take that with a grain of salt because these two sets of minigames are very, very different. I think these GamePad minigames were cute, clever ideas, but it's a shame that they were really only kept to this mode. I feel like it would have made a lot of sense to incorporate these minigames into some of the TV party modes like GamePad Island or Me Fashion Plaza as duels. The free-for-alls work fine enough as duels, but I think it would have made for some novel experiences to have two players move to the gamepad to play a duel against each other, or at the very least, it would have added some new opportunities for diversity within the minigame selection and utilization of the gamepad. There is one minigame mode that I didn't cover earlier, and that's because it utilized the gamepad minigame, so I figured it would be more appropriate to cover here. Tabletop Tournament is a minigame mode where players go head-to-head in the gamepad minigames to see who's the best duelist. There are two modes. The first is a simple single elimination bracket similar to the dual minigame modes of Mario Party's past, which is alright but kind of vapid. The second, though, is a round-robin competition where each potential matchup happens in a random order, and the player with the most wins takes the victory. This is so much better. It doesn't take forever like Waterfall Battle, but it isn't vapid like a single elimination bracket. The round-robin mode is the way to go, and I'd love to see this integrated into a Mario Party game in some way. GamePad Party had the potential to really stand out when compared to the pair games in Wii Party, but I don't think that GamePad Party has any mode that's competitive with something like Balance Boat or Matchup. GamePad Party isn't like horrible or anything, but it's noticeably vapid and has little to no staying power long term. It feels more like a proof of concept, a showcase of how the gamepad can be used to simulate tabletop arcade games and board games and such, but that novelty cannot carry this mode into being a fun, repeatable party game over time. However, there's one more section of content in this game that we need to discuss, and it's the section of the game that likely prompted this sequel's creation in the first place. Wii Party's House Party mode was the big breakthrough for ND Cube as the developers ruminated over how a party game could utilize the space around the players and feel like a party in the truest sense of the word. This resulted in modes like Hide and Hunt, where players literally hid Wii remotes around the room, and Time Bomb, where players passed the Wii remote to each other gingerly to not set the bomb off. It's a mode that you could write off as gimmicky at a first glance, but was actually very out of the box and had a shocking amount of replay value. So, if the team at ND Cube were able to create a one-of-a-kind mode out of hiding a Wii remote, they were the people to trust to create some unique gameplay modes for the Wii U gamepad. Nintendo was pretty confident in House Party, highlighting it very heavily in their marketing materials leading up to this game's release, from the October Nintendo Direct to these online-only ads with beloved American actor Wayne Brady.
We party you!
House Party contains 8 different modes, which is much more than Wii Party, so there's a lot to delve into here. So without further ado, let's talk about each of these modes and see what ND Cube cooked up. Let's get started with Button Smashers. In my Wii Party video, I described Time Bomb as controller twister, since you were passing a Wii Remote to another player while holding a button, and the other player needed to grab the Wii Remote and hold down their button before you could let go of it. However, Button Smashers is controller twister in its purest form. In Button Smashers, you will lay Wii Remotes and the Wii U gamepad out on a table, and then the game will take turns telling players to hold or release certain buttons. The game ends when somebody releases a button they're holding or presses a button they weren't supposed to press. It's as simple as it looks, and while it can be fun for a game or two, it's probably not going to be entering your party game rotation long term. Now, Name That Face, on the other hand, that's more up my alley. In Name That Face, one player with the gamepad will be given a prompt and must make a face that matches that prompt. The other players must then guess the prompt, and each player who guessed correctly will gain 10 points. If you're the face maker, you'll also gain 10 points for each player that gets your prompt right. At the end of the game, the player with the most points wins. Name That Face is simple but very fun and can provide some great opportunities for some laughs with friends. It's a clever use of the Wii U gamepad's camera as well. It doesn't overstay its welcome, and overall, it's a charming little mode. Next is Lost and Found Square, which utilizes the gamepad's gyroscope. In Lost and Found Square, players on the TV will work together to find the gamepad player in this giant map with tons of doppelgangers. The gamepad player cannot move, but instead needs to use the gyroscope to look at their surroundings and describe to the TV players where they are using landmarks. Once one of the TV players finds the gamepad player, they'll receive points based on how much time remains. After each player gets a turn on the gamepad, the player with the most points wins. Lost and Found Square is a super cute and fun mode. If you enjoy playing games like Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes, where different players have different bits of information and have to communicate with each other, Lost and Found Square is perfect for your group. It has this fascinating competitive communication where the gamepad player wants all seekers to find them fast so they can cash in on a hefty reward, but the TV players want to find the gamepad player before everybody else to increase their point lead. So while everybody is cooperating with the gamepad player, the TV players are directly competing and have to figure out where the gamepad player is without giving it away to the other competitors. It's a really fun time and one of those modes that I could easily play with friends over and over again and never get bored. Sketchy Situation is next up, using the gamepad's touchscreen as the key focus. In Sketchy Situation, each player will take turns drawing a prompt on the gamepad. You only have 15 seconds, so every drawing has to be quickly sketched out. However, one player is going to get a different prompt from the other players, so one player might receive the prompt to draw a candle, while the 3 other players are told to draw a stick of dynamite. Once everybody draws, the drawings are flashed on screen and everybody has to pick the drawing that has a different prompt. If you guess correctly, you'll get 10 points for questions 1 and 2 and 30 points for question 3. Sketchy Situation is a cute little mode. It's fast-paced since everybody has so little time to draw, and it can be really funny seeing what other players draw for the same prompt that you got. However, it's a little too easy to decipher. Some prompts are more difficult than others, but I think you'd have to really throw to draw a picture that throws off the other players. It's a cute and fun little mode to try out, but I think this idea has been outdone by games like Drawful. Do You Know Me is exactly as its name implies. It's another friendship tester. Similarly to Buddy Quiz from Wii Party, Do You Know Me puts one player in the hot seat for each round and asks them to answer a question on the gamepad. The rest of the players then need to guess what that player said about themselves. However, instead of this being multiple choice like Buddy Quiz, Do You Know Me asks players to put their answers on a scale. So if the game asks a question like, how gullible are you? Your answer can be placed on a scale from never fooled to super gullible. The player who gets the closest to the gamepad player's answers overall is declared the winner, while the player who is the furthest from the answers overall is ridiculed. I love this mode just like I loved Buddy Quiz. These sorts of get to know your friends games are so much fun to me. This game reminds me a lot of the 2019 board game Wavelength, if you've ever played that. Putting your answers on a scale is a good setup because then it gives a lot of room to explain your rationale, much more than a simple multiple choice question. It's a super fun, light social guessing mode that doesn't last super long but is super replayable. So as long as you've got a group of friends who are comfortable answering some questions about themselves, this is a really fun time. Water Runners is a, interesting one. Water Runners uses the Wii U gamepad sensor bar. In Water Runners, you need to place the Wii U gamepad a good distance away from the TV. Players will then physically walk to the gamepad, point their Wii Remote at the sensor bar to dip their scoop in the water, then have to gingerly carry the water over to the TV and avoid avoid spilling any by tipping their Wii Remote. The first player to fill their jar wins. This is one of those really unique, out-of-the-box ideas that only ND Cube would come up with. It's a really clever usage of the Wii U's hardware and creates a one-of-a-kind experience. However, that experience isn't super consistent. Firstly, you have to have a large enough space to even play this mode properly. So if you don't have an expansive living room to play this in, don't even bother trying. If you do have the room, it can be very fun and novel to try to walk slowly and carry the water to the TV. However, there can also be a lot of inconsistency as to whether pointing at the gamepad works, pointing at the TV works, whether your Wii Remote is sensitive at all to movement while you walk. I've had sessions of this mode work well, and I've had sessions not work well at all. I think your mileage may vary depending on the space you're playing in and the quality of your Wii Remotes, etc., but it is a really out-of-the-box idea nonetheless. Feed Me is a mode based around visiting your friend while they're at work and messing with them. One player takes orders from the other players, then once they're done, the order taker has to assign the orders to the customers who ordered them. The customers then decide if the order taker did a good job by reviewing them, and then... Wait, that's it? Feed Me is cute and worth a few chuckles, but there's no real game here. It's fun taking orders from your friends and maybe keeping track of who performs the best, but you have to make that scoring system outside of the game itself. Super cute, just very shallow. And finally, we have Dance With Me, a mode Nintendo really loved to promote. In Dance With Me, players will place the gamepad on the floor and gather in a circle around it. They will then join hands by holding the Wii Remotes between each other, then raising and lowering the remotes as the gamepad tells them to. You'll then get a rank at the end of the session depending on how well you do. It's just as humiliating as it sounds. Dance With Me makes for a cute laughing session with some friends, but let's be honest, it's about as deep as an office team building exercise. The modes in House Party this time around are interesting. I'd say we've got a good variety here. There are extraordinary modes that are super fun even 12 years later. There are modes that were super clever for the time but have been kind of outdone in future party games. And then we've got some really shallow games that you probably play once or twice, then never again. I will say, ND Cube definitely utilized the gamepad in House Party, from its unique mechanical features to its asymmetrical nature. You gotta respect ND Cube for the variety here, and you can tell that House Party was the focus for this new entry, and where ND Cube really saw room for expansion. I don't think House Party was the best utilization of the gamepad that we saw on the Wii U, even for multiplayer experiences. However, I think it did reaffirm ND Cube's status as the developer with the ability to utilize hardware in unconventional ways and create party games that foster novel social experiences, unlike any other party game studio at the time. While some of these modes might not always hit, I have to admire the creativity on display here. There's a lot here that will bring a smile to many players' faces. On that note, let's chat about Wii Party U's beginner friendliness. Wii Party was the first game to get 5 stars on my beginner friendliness meter, largely thanks to its quick pace, expansive variety, and streamlined modes that leave no beginner behind. Wii Party U, unsurprisingly, passes with flying colors in this avenue as well. The modes in this game are also fast-paced, easy to understand, and engaging for players of all skill levels. The minigames are consistently enjoyable, and there are a lot of novel modes that you can enjoy with a group of friends. No matter who you get together, there's bound to be something in Wii Party U that appeals to your group, especially with the expanded House Party section. Wii Party U also has a few features that make it easier to find a mode that best fits your needs as well. At the bottom of the screen, there's a little suggestion tab where Party Phil will ask you some questions about how many people are playing and what kind of mood you're in, and then suggest a mode that fits your group's interests to help you find something that works best for you. This is super cool. It doesn't hit 100% of the time, but it's a really nice feature for groups of players who might not even know where to start. Wii Party did have this as well, and it's a super nice feature in both games. But how about something that's exclusive to Wii Party U? Well, after you play each minigame and mode, the game asks you to rate your experience from 1 to 5 stars, which was a bit of the inspiration behind my rating system for these very videos. The super cool thing back in the day was that these ratings were uploaded to the internet so you could see a consensus on what the best minigames and modes were. So if you wanted to, you could crowdsource the community community's opinion on what the best minigame was to check out. Unfortunately, since Nintendo shut down all of the Wii U internet servers, we can't access this data today. But you can still rate minigames to contribute to your own personal rankings and remind yourself of your favorites. The ones you're seeing on screen are mine that I and friends have been contributing to since 2013, so it's safe to say my opinion has changed in some places. This rating system was so genius, man. As a party game stats nerd, I'd love to see this sort of thing make a return for future Nintendo Cube party games to help newcomers find the best modes to try out. Wii Party U, like its older sibling, gets 5 stars on my beginner friendliness meter. The Wii Party games are, in my opinion, the perfect party games to pop in when you've got a group of people who vary in experience with gaming. Wii Party U is an excellent choice for groups of all ages and experience levels, especially if you're looking to get a little goofy in the house party section. Wii Party U is a great party game. In its best moments, it offers some of my favorite multiplayer experiences out of any party game ever released. Just like its older brother, it's also got tons of variety and is really creative with its uses of the Wii U gamepad in the house party section. However, while there are moments where this game sprints past the competition in spectacular fashion, there are also moments where it sort of lazily strolls past the finish line. TV Party's modes are the biggest example of this in my eyes. Many of them feel like rehashes of Wii Party's content with very little growth or additional levels of polish. Even the modes that I'd argue were better than Wii Party's versions are mostly marginal improvements. TV Party lacks that creative spark that made Wii Party such a new, unique party game a few years prior. I think Nintendo and ND Cube were hoping that Wii Party U would be another big leap forward for party games, just like the previous entry, which is exemplified in their marketing language leading up to the game's release.
We are hoping for Wii Party U to be the definitive party game, which is accessible for everyone with its different forms of gameplay using the gamepad.
I think in a lot of ways, Wii Party U lived up to this statement. It is an accessible party game, and it does utilize the gamepad in tons of different ways. I don't know if it's quite definitive, but this game had a long-lasting appeal to the point where I still get the urge to break this game out and dust off the gamepad when I've got friends over. I think Wii Party U delivers as a party game package, but I also think that it's reasonable to say that it somewhat proved that the Wii Party formula is a lot more challenging to iterate on. In contrast, Mario Party is very easy to iterate on. It was an annual franchise for several years for a reason. Mario Party has a very structured formula. It usually features boards with stars and coins and mini-games that break up turns. Each entry then typically tweaks the mechanics found within that structure, which is where you get rule set changes or item set changes that feel fresh and different, but still familiar and natural for the series. That can cause its own set of challenges, like getting into ruts and the feeling of being suffocated by brand expectations. If you change things too much, to quote Satoru Iwata, some might say it's not Mario Party. However, it does give structure and parameters on what makes a Mario Party game, and then you can iterate and innovate within that basic concept. With Wii Party, however, the concept is a lot looser. What is the essence of a Wii Party game? If you ask me, it's the structure of having multiple modes that are all roughly equal in depth that center around minigames or unique house party experiences using the console's hardware. However, that's a very abstract definition. Wii Party set itself apart from Mario Party specifically due to its rejection of the idea that party video games are just about virtual board games. The guardrails from the Mario Party series were taken off, and it allowed the team to run wild with lots of new and clever ideas, bringing a fresh, new perspective and format to a genre that is otherwise seen as formulaic and stagnant by general audiences. That's a fantastic recipe for a successful party game, but a challenging blueprint for a repeatable series. You can't just add new boards, items, and minigames to make a new Wii Party. You've got to come up with all new modes. Iterating on past ideas is a lot more challenging because the modes are much more succinct. So if you rehash a mode from the previous game, you run the risk of players feeling like they've been there and done that already. However, asking the designers to constantly reinvent themselves with all new game modes for every entry is easier said said than done. I think this is why we see Wii Party U's most sequel-worthy content in the House Party section. With new hardware came new features and opportunities for play space modes that couldn't have been done in the previous entry. However, the TV Party section, while competent, was very iterative and lacked that imaginative freshness that Wii Party had. That's why I think we haven't seen a new entry in the Wii Party series for over 10 years now. Creating a third Wii Party game that essentially rehashed modes like Board Game Island or Swap Meet for a third time would not resonate with audiences like it did the first time, and it runs the risk of completely undermining the series' appeal. So, the Wii Party series faded away with its second entry. However, I'd argue that its essence and impact has continued to live on through many other party games, from modern Mario Party to 1-2 Switch. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Despite all of these somewhat negative sentiments, I still think Wii Party U was a success, relatively speaking. It reportedly sold 1.79 million units worldwide according to the CESA White Book 2021, which was obviously a fraction of what Wii Party sold, but still pretty successful in the grand scope of the Wii U's library. While I think that Wii Party is the better game overall, I think Wii Party U has some modes and content that is really clever and still fun to return to today. Spot the Sneak in Wii Party U is the superior version and one of my favorite minigame modes of all time. House Party has a lot of neat modes that still put a smile on my face when playing them with friends. The minigames in Wii Party U are, in my opinion, pretty consistently great. If you've never played Wii Party U, I'd recommend checking it out if you're looking for something new and novel to play with some friends. It's a really great game if you're looking for something different, but I don't know if it has enough meat on its bones to become your party game main course. If Wii Party established a new standard, Wii Party U met that standard, but didn't really do much that would push that standard forward. So, where does ND Cube go from here? Well, it wouldn't take them very long to drop another party game. In fact, in less than 1 month in North America, ND Cube would release the next installment in the Mario Party series, although this time, it's on a handheld. So, I hope you'll join me on the next episode of Mark's Rec Room, where we'll be talking about Mario Party Island Tour. Thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I hope that you have a great rest of your day.